fantastic group of experts that are going to help us really focus on what are we doing and how are we reopening our commercial properties. And we have experts from all sorts of fields. If you were with us a few days ago, welcome back to Ken. Thank you so much for being here. Casey, the CEO and COO of the Bloom Organization. We have Rob Kiwi, our COO of the Federation, and Jerome Horowitz, our Regional Security Director. And we're really excited to be able to offer this from all of our perspectives today. So we are going to get started in just a second, and I want to let everybody know that if you have any questions for us, there's a Q&A feature in Zoom. We would love for you to use that. That helps us organize the questions as we go for our fabulous panelists. And if you just would like to chat to our panelists or anything like that, that's a great use of the chat function. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody. So we are actually going to kick it off with our veteran, Ken. So Ken, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. First of all, thank you for calling me fabulous several times. So I appreciate that. Don't get that very often. So I'm a transactional real estate lawyer. So I'm just going to share my experience, what I've seen in the last few months. And the bad news everybody knows about, unemployment figures are terrible. Almost 39 million Americans have filed for unemployment in the last 2 months. So things are bad in terms of the economy, obviously because of the uncertainty of the pandemic. And as far as commercial real estate transactions, there's been dramatic impact on real estate purchases and sales. In particular, in the month of April, everything just kind of went off the cliff, meaning, you know, there's a dramatic decline in deals happening and a dramatic increase in deals that fell out, either when people were within their right to do it during the due diligence period or even afterwards, just busting a deal and you know, doing what they could to get out because there's so much unknown. In certain sectors they've felt that more than others. Unfortunately, retail and office have suffered as a result because people haven't been using those offices and the retail stores haven't been open. Industrial and residential have been holding up better. For deals that are still alive and still in the pipeline, they tend to be moving a lot slower, and some are just in a holding pattern where buyers, for example, are just buying more and more time, asking for extensions of time to try to get a better handle on where things are going. There's also been a flight to safety where people have been looking at higher quality assets, not necessarily, you know, whether the property itself is a higher quality is one thing, but also just the tenants that pay that rent, you know, focusing on the lease income, trying to get financial statements from the tenants, carefully scrutinizing the guarantors to try to see what their creditworthiness is as well. The required returns that people are looking at have increased because they see greater risk. So I hope this isn't too boring. It sounds very financial oriented, but you know, I'm just telling you what I hear. I've talked about due diligence being slower. There's been problems with that. You know, one of the big problems is the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection records offices are closed. And so environmental consultants can't get access to those records. So the ability to complete a phase one is hindered significantly. And there's also been problems getting certificate of occupancy inspections completed in municipalities where that's required. And your broker can guide you through these details, but you need to expect delays and be patient. And one thing a lot of agreements are doing these days are adding provisions to allow an extension up to, for example, 30 days to accommodate for delays caused by COVID. As far as financing, times like this really point to a need to have good relationships with lenders. If you're just coming out of the blue to a lender for a first-time transaction, you're going to have a much harder time than if you've been dealing with a lender for years and they're comfortable dealing with you, because lenders are going to be a little more conservative because of the unknowns here. One area where there's been a lot of activity in commercial real estate is leases, because there's a lot of lease renegotiations happening right now. Not necessarily a lot of new leases happening, but a lot of existing tenants obviously haven't paid their rent or paid partial rent. So they're trying to renegotiate with their landlords. And the response to that is all over the place depending on the situation. Some landlords agree, yes, you can pay partial rent, but I need to tack on some time at the end of your lease term. Some landlords are saying, yes, I'll defer your rent, but you need to pay it off in 2 months or over 6 months or over 12 months. So it's all over the place. You know, the tenants are in a tough situation where most of their leases require them to continue paying rent, despite the fact they can't use their offices or their retail buildings. And so the first step they would do is apply to their insurance company for a business interruption claim, but unfortunately, 95, 98, 99% of business interruption policies exclude the virus. So they have not gotten they haven't gotten any satisfaction from their insurers. And some governments are talking about possibly changing the law to force the insurers to include these pandemic-related insurance costs in their coverage, which is a multi-billion-dollar issue if they do that. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But rest assured, there's going to be a lot of litigation over this if something like that gets passed. Pennsylvania, in particular, has been pushing that hard. I'm not as sure about where New Jersey is, but these ideas are being floated. And one last thing to mention about these lease revisions: a lot of times landlords need to get their lender's approval for these lease renegotiations. Lenders have been giving those approvals subject to the tenants being obligated, for example, to apply for the PPP loans, the EIDL loans, and other government benefits. And if they do get that, then to pay the deferred rent upon receipt of the funds. So I'm done. I hope that wasn't too boring and too financial, but that's my world.
Oh, thank you, Ken, for the wealth of knowledge. It's probably going to take people a few minutes to sift through all of that. And if you come up with a question that you would like to ask Ken, we'll circle back. But thank you. And I have a list of my own. So thank you very much. Next, we're going to head over to Casey. Casey, welcome. Oh.
There we go. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And Kenny, thank you for that. I'm living that world on a daily basis right now. My company is a commercial landlord in Southern New Jersey, owning office and industrial properties, and dealing with a lot of things Kenny talked about. Today, I'm just going to shift the focus about people coming back to work and what to do. So here we go. Hopefully in the near future, as this area starts to stabilize from the COVID-19 pandemic, the stay-at-home restrictions are going to be lifted, and it's time to bring back the workforce. It's scary right now to predict the unpredictable, but I'm going to take a shot and lay out about 7 steps, useful protocols, the things that you can think about as you open up your businesses or go back to work and start interacting with coworkers. So I'm going to talk about preparing the workspace, preparing your employees, controlling access, social distancing, cleaning frequently touched surfaces, employee feedback, and a few miscellaneous items. So none of those things are things you probably haven't thought about 100 times in every single day and as you're doing your life, but we're going to try to put them into the workplace. So first, you got to consider preparing your workplace before your workers return. Health and safety are on top of the list. Who's going to supply the PPE? Are you going to make sure everybody brings in a mask? Are you going to supply masks, gloves, sanitizers, shields, whatever your business may be? Do you want to set up plexiglass at the reception area? Do you want to set up higher dividers between your cubicles? Do you want to rearrange and modify your cubicles? Should you be removing your tables and chairs from your lunchroom? Same for your lobby furniture and your conference rooms. How are you going to handle signage? You're going to put signage on the front door. You're going to have internal signage. Again, depending upon where you, what kind of business you have, whether you have 5 people or 50 people or 100 people, the circulation of the space could become a big issue. So I really, to end this section, is just the more you do in advance, the faster your employees will feel safe and be productive. Secondly, you need to prepare your employees for what to expect upon their return. Just opening up the door is not enough. Communication is the key. It's a shared responsibility between employers and employees, and you need to talk to your employees in advance, uncover their concerns, and discuss your expectations of their behaviors. Things to discuss are, if you're not feeling right, stay home. If you're feeling sick when you're in the office, go home. How are we going to use masks? How are we going to play around with social distancing? And what are our rules going to be in the office when it comes to shared areas and using our supplies? I think the ultimate goal is with your employees is you got to mitigate the anxiety. People are going to be anxious. So, third, controlling access into your building or your suite. So if you're in a multi-tenant building, it's your suite. If it's your own front door leading to the outside, then how do you control coming in? You want to limit access by vendors, maintenance personnel, mail carriers, FedEx, UPS, office supply deliveries, vendors, clients, whoever it may be. People are posting rules at their front door: stop, call before you come in, ring the doorbell, knock on the door, to totally limit, so you can limit your world a little bit, so to speak. Some people are placing boxes outside their office for their mailman to place their mail if they don't have a mailbox. Same thing with your office deliveries. But it's very important that you just communicate what your desires are to the people that have to come to your office. You need to create a visitor policy. Almost all offices right now are not allowing visitors. But if there's a reason that somebody has to have a visitor, you've got to create the visitor policy on how people are going to come in to your space. Your employees have to understand, they have to respect, and they have to be the communicators, because you can't communicate to everybody. Okay, next, social distancing. In my opinion, flexibility is the key here. You as the employer need to set an example for your employees to see. You can't be afraid to ask somebody to back off, separate, too many people together, too close. It is a totally unnatural situation that we're in, because we're used to gathering together, collaborating together, and you have to help set the tone by keeping people in their places. Some people are going to be really comfortable going everywhere and doing anything, and they would probably want to touch and hug, and other people are going to be totally freaked out. So I think you have to help both sides find the middle ground. Otherwise, you're just going to have a lot of anxiety in your office. So some things that people are doing to help with social distancing is staggering start and stop times. So not everybody's going to come in at the same time, and not everybody leave at the same time. We're also seeing splitting your workforce. Everybody has become really comfortable working at home, but there's going to be times you need people in the office. Try to set a schedule. Maybe this group of people comes in Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the office and stays home Tuesday, Thursday and works from home, or vice versa, whatever you find works for your company. Limiting cubicle use is going to be a very big thing. It's very hard to social distance with cubicles next to each other without proper separation. So reconfiguring cubicles is not that easy to go do, because you need space. So what people may be doing is shifting cubicles, no more of basically where you come in, it's an open desk, and wherever you just find the desk, you sit down and use. I think those days are over with right now. So figure out your lunchroom, figure out your conference room, break rooms. How are you going to social distance in those environments? Again, if you're in an office with 5 to 10 people, a lot easier. People can eat at their desk. If you're in a place that has 50 to 100 people with a cafeteria, how is the cafeteria going to be handled? Setting those rules up are really, really important. Signage and communicating them. And then think about the circulation, which we talked about within the office. When you talk about frequently touched surfaces, this is what freaks everybody out. So try to leave as many doors open as possible that people don't have to touch doors. Light switches get turned on at the beginning of the day. Nobody touches light switches. How you handle your copier, your fax machine, your drawers, file cabinets. things like that are important. You have to communicate with the janitorial staff that you may supply or your building may supply on the things that you want them to do. You just can't disinfect. You have to clean and disinfect. Also, you can also assign somebody in your office the responsibility to help keep things, frequently touched surfaces, disinfected during the day. Create the rules. And I would just say, end this part with, nobody said it was going to be easy. Feedback. I think it's extremely important to get feedback from your employees. You have to be flexible. You can't fight change. You have to communicate, collaborate, adjust. You have to help find a way to make your employees comfortable so they can be productive. I'm going to just wrap this up on the other end, talking about just specifically my real estate world is we have to show buildings to people that want to rent space, and we have to figure out a new way to do this right now. We have to handle, if we need to go get government approvals to build a project, how are these meetings happening? Are they virtual meetings? Are they going to be rescheduled? Because we have timelines that we have to get things done with. Permit inspections, certificate of occupancy inspections. If you're lucky enough to get to a closing table, who goes to closing? Landlord-tenant relationships are really big right now. Tenants have issues. You've got to do your part to help them through, because otherwise these issues all become landlord issues. How are you going to entertain clients? How do you go create new business? How do you keep customers? You just got to keep adjusting and being flexible. So just in a nutshell, what we just talked about was preparing your workspace, preparing your employees, controlling access, social distancing, cleaning frequently touched surfaces, feedback from employees, and doing your jobs differently.
Thanks, Casey.
I'm out of breath.
That was a lot of fun. No, thank you. And I really personally resonated with the communicating to reduce anxiety, because there's definitely, from what I've learned, two types of people: the people that want to hug tomorrow and the people that don't want a handshake for 2 more years. Personally, I'm strongly, I'll wave hi from 6 feet away.
Right.
Just really communicating so that nobody feels, slighted is really huge. So thank you. We're heading over to Rob now. Hi, Rob.
Thank you. Hi, Charlene. Miss seeing you in the office, but
Yes.
One day we will be back. I also want to thank you for having me here. I want to try to bring this back a little bit towards the local community synagogues, Jewish day schools, JCC. Obviously, the information can be modified to any facility out there, but just to bring it home a little bit to us. So things to consider for the building return, and some of this is reiterating what Casey had said. But first of all, things change very, very constantly. So we're telling you what we know today, and tomorrow or next week, it could be very different. But it's ultimately important to adhere to the state guidelines, the CDC recommendations. A large document came out yesterday from the CDC. A lot of information in there, some of it easier than others to accomplish, but it's certainly a guide. And you just got to consider when and how you're going to do it. And where you can, be thoughtful, be strategic, and be prudent, because people have to feel comfortable, staff and users alike. So yes, we're going to some difficult measures, but we're doing it for our own people. We're doing it for outside people. And at the end of the day, we want to be welcoming. So social distancing, consider what's possibly be done, consider what's viable. And we also may come back gradually. Not everybody's necessarily going to come back at the same time, and not everything at the same time. So just going back to facility modification, as he said, entranceways, no touch. Where possible, prop open the doors, leave them open. Expect to do temperature checks, monitor the temperatures of all the people coming into the facility. Try to figure out where it's done, how it's done. Maybe it's the role of guest services, maybe it's volunteers, maybe it's security force. You may create a COVID-19 safety staff team, and there could be newer revised roles there for current personnel to make people more comfortable coming in. You have to limit the number of people that are coming in most circumstances. You have to determine when and where people can go. That's not the world we live in. We are typically the welcoming engagement, make people feel good about coming to our places. Now there's a couple of challenges, and social distancing certainly is going to be a challenge for our world. We are definitely in the engagement business. So for example, a JCC lobby, the fitness center, the sanctuary of a synagogue, the social hall, those are definitely social distancing challenges. Like Casey said earlier, remove furniture to avoid the gathering. In the case of the JCC, we would close locker rooms to limit the time that people are spending in the building, limit the areas of activity that are available, and it will be a phased-in approach. The signage, very important. Floor markings, social distance, traffic flow. Very highly probable that there could be staggered shift and staggered days. Employees and members, different people come in at different times. There's actually, it's early, but there's talk of that being how schools will possibly return. Different, either grades on different days or different, last names on different days, and on the opposite days doing the online learning still. Equipment needs, you will definitely need some PPE, personal protection equipment. Money will be spent on it, but it's important to have it for the comfort level of obviously your staff, as Casey mentioned, and also making people feel good about coming back. So masks for employees, for members, for congregants, for guests, KN95s, N95s, three-ply disposal. There's a lot of different stuff out there. Gloves for the staff and for your disinfectant applications. Touchless thermometers, most of them are battery operated, so you got to get spare batteries. Disinfectant wipes and sanitizer gels that people can feel comfortable with. The plexiglass barriers are definitely probably a thing of the future for reception desks, added protection, comfort level, and blocking in between different people's workstations. And also just make sure that you're using the proper cleaning products, the stuff that will absolutely kill this virus. So also definitely new guidelines coming down the pike, new rules for staff, new rules for members and building guests to come in. Masks will certainly be required in the public spaces. Shared workstations, phones, office supplies, multiple people that use the same location, they've got to be responsible for wiping down their own equipment. The reception desk, probably multiple people use that space. It's important to disinfect the shared workspace. And again, that's a new responsibility for the staff. And I don't think you're going to have much issue convincing people to do it because it's for their safety as well. So we're going to be cleaning our own workstations. It's going to be do it yourself. There's a lot of, and providing hand wash stations, sanitized product all over your facilities to make people feel comfortable. Possibly a health questionnaire for staff before they come in and or participants. Temperature checks. If people are over the norm is 104 degrees, they would probably not be allowed in that day. Signage, communication, internal, external, all important. 6 feet distances, one-way traffic patterns, similar to what you see now in grocery stores or Walmarts, and lots of options out there for putting these things, stickers for your floors, and I'm sure they can get personalized for your particular business, synagogue, agency, whatever. And there's going to be some program modifications. There's going to be a new normal out there, and we cannot do what we used to do in the same way. Just because we're open doesn't mean everyone's going to feel comfortable coming back. You have to assess the comfort levels. Different populations will have different levels of comfort. So the virtual programming and the virtual messaging that's going on out there now, it's probably going to remain for certain populations and certain groups for some time longer. So just some considerations. And again, nothing crazy here, but synagogues, obviously less seats are going to be made available in the sanctuary. Maybe multiple sessions will be held. JFCS, just as an example, the Family and Children's Services, it's one client at a time. It's probably no longer waiting on the premises. Maybe you're waiting in your car and they text you when they're ready and then you come in that way. The client that's in the office or the chair, it's up to the therapist probably to sanitize that seat between clients, make sure everybody feels comfortable. Max number of visitors at one time, reserve space, days, times for fitness offerings as an example. And again, you just have to communicate the guidelines to everybody. You're probably thinking about, depending on the size of your organization, creating a safety team for the facility and monitor and help people when they're coming into the entrances to feel comfortable about coming in. Possibly new procedures, social distancing, the layout of your lobby, the layout of your furniture, the layout of fitness and equipment in a gymnasium, limiting the number of people or participants in an early childhood class, for example. Social hall, sanctuary of the synagogue, limit the number of people. Maybe you're creating a second space option for certain programs to help limit that space. Early childhood, limit number of kids in a classroom. Maybe the parents drop the kids off out and the family comes out, the staff comes out to pick them up. You don't let everybody enter into the building. Staff come out and get the child. Maybe the class is staying in the classroom more often instead of going to other parts of the building and the activity comes into them. Maybe there's more outside activities if it's feasible. Counseling services, masks. Obviously, does the therapist though wear the mask? Maybe the client wants to feel comfortable that they're receiving or recognizing the message audibly and getting the true value of their service. In that case, clear face shields is also an opportunity. Obviously, deliveries, Vendors, no longer, you have to control the access, curbside pickup, similar to what the restaurants are doing. Certainly new protocols coming down the pike. New and improved facility cleaning protocol, deep clean and disinfect much more regularly, and certainly the common areas. Take care of the touch points more regularly. You got to decide for yourselves who's responsible, what's the responsibility of your cleaning service, and what's the responsibility of the staff. And I think, again, the staff will be willing and able to do more of the cleaning. Consider deep cleaning on a more frequent basis, depending on the usage of your programs. Also allow for time to clean around your program and or after facility use. Maybe you're changing the hours of your facility or your business to allow more cleaning in between, and create schedules and breaks to allow for more cleaning. And lastly, just hold the staff more accountable to assist the cleaning protocol for the clean. It's for the benefit of everyone. It's for their benefit. It's for the people that are coming into the building's benefit. It's clearly a shared responsibility. So it's the new normal that we are living in.
Thanks, Rob. I
Thank
think really when you talk about engagement or really customer service and balancing that with our safety is sort of been on our minds for a while with added security protocol, but now it's sort of adding another level. With that, I want to hand it over to our final fabulous speaker. I had to use that word again because apparently I used it a few times. Daron. So welcome, Daron.
To all the guests that spoke and shared their wisdom and expertise, it's greatly appreciated. I feel compelled for someone that has been through emergency crisis and critical incidents in the past, obviously not to this degree in this form. There are certain principles that remain the same in terms of emergency management and what is required to manage and recover. But also there's a human component that requires the attitude or the approach of resiliency. You know, they say, I very much like the saying that tough times don't last, but tough people do. And this is a time and period in which the leadership very much expressed here and the people even joining, that this is really a message of empowerment and strength, that in spite of the difficult and challenging times, we are obligated to continue moving forward in the most productive and effective way, and at the same time supporting each other. So I'm going to probably echo some of the things that have been reiterated and said here. So I thank you for that. When it comes to emergency management and security, one of the most important things is, first of all, to acknowledge what is the reality that we are currently living in and what that impact has on us from a safety and security perspective. And what I mean by that, oftentimes in dire, difficult economic times, there's an alignment and association and a strong relationship between that and an increase in criminal activity. And criminal activity can be played out in a very unpredictable but harsh manner. People have gone through and will continue to go through an incredibly difficult time that we'll probably witness difficult scenarios, and people out of desperation turn to criminal activity to just to survive. And that's a reality that is not so known here. We haven't seen here for many, many years, but in other parts of the world, that is routine. So when it comes to safety and security of your businesses, of your schools, of your houses of worship, you need to take that into consideration and integrate the safety and security component into your overall plan. When it comes to emergency management and recovery, it is incredibly important that we develop or address the issue of forming a recovery team. And a recovery team will very much address all the issues that were raised from Kenneth and Casey and Rob, as well as myself, that designated the right people with the right expertise. It could be senior leadership in terms of messaging and managing and controlling and providing guidance and direction is incredibly important as long as that message is consistent from the top all the way down. Your IT, your human resources, your HR people may play a much larger role that they have prior to that. Facilities and operations, communications and public affairs. What is your message internally to your team and to your business, your school, your synagogue, your community center? And what is it externally? What are you communicating to the public? What is the message? Is the message reasonable? Is it balanced? Are people feeling that they're actually arriving to a safe and secure environment with a sense of confidence and not uncertainty? Uncertainty has been the sense of uncertainty has been very prevalent and will continue to be so until we reach a level or an attainable level of sanity for all intents and purposes. So make sure that that recovery team drives the process of managing from the beginning throughout, as well as, and this has been mentioned here before, communication. What are you communicating? What is your plan so that it resonates all the way to the person? As soon as they wake up in the morning, they know where they're going, they know what the expectations are, they understand the deficiencies, the weaknesses, and the need to support each other and support the plan that has been put forth. When it comes to very basic security principles, there could be new threats emerging that we need to be able to address that could present new vulnerabilities in the workplace, from not having a plan to the necessity to perhaps develop and design a plan, to drill that plan to make sure that you are what you are capable or what you want, you're actually capable of doing. In other words, you want to be in a position that you are in fact providing or facilitating a safe and secure environment, and you have the means to do so. And that plays all in a part and parcel of the overall leadership and the recovery team. Who's going to be coordinating those efforts and identifying the necessary resources to achieve that level of operation so that you can resume, be safe, be secure, from cleanliness to perhaps a disgruntled employee. Violence in the workplace was prevalent in this society up until COVID-19, will continue to play a significant role. We can't underestimate the impact that this has had on the human condition and what that could lead to. Protecting our employees, our teachers, our staff, our clergy, our congregants is always and will always be a high priority. I think it was Casey that mentioned, being sensitive to the HR issues, inviting feedback so that people are empowered to feel that they are part of the resumption of the operations in a very safe, responsible, and secure way. Again, the recovery team will drive this process. Making sure, if you were to leave, if I were to leave one message, and I'm going to be quick because Charlene only gave me 45 minutes, so I have to be very cognizant of my time.
Thanks, Drew.
I'm here next week too. Please make sure that you have a plan, even if that plan is incredibly simplistic. The best plan is only going to be measured on how effective people are able to follow that plan. The CDC has provided guidelines and materials. I don't know what percentage of the population are able to follow those guidance, but if you have a plan, make sure that it's usable, executable, and effective. That's your measurement. And communication, again, I'm going to reiterate something that was mentioned here before. Communicate what that plan is so that you're setting expectations, whether it's from the moment an individual enters your property. You have to ask yourself, do they have a clear understanding of what the protocol is, what the procedures may be, the conduct, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable? I don't know if 104 temperature is that borderline. If it is, then we need to communicate that, right? So consistency in messaging coupled with having a plan and communicating that plan is key. With that, I'll pass it back to Charlene, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daron. Yes, I think you're always on the message of having a plan pre and really post this coronavirus time. So we do have a few questions that came in. I'll give everyone a quick second. Looks like some more are coming in right now. So first one is for Ken. Hi, Ken. Welcome back. I'm going to read this so I get it right. But what will the impetus for buyers and sellers restarting their deals? What markers can we look for?
So markers, it's all about the virus, and it's all about the number of cases, and it's about the confidence that we're gonna come up with a cure for this. And people are trying to figure out where we're going. Are we going to go where we were in 2008, 2009, where there was a Great Recession and people were hurting for an extended period of time? Are we going to the Great Depression back, in 1929? Or is this going to be a temporary thing where in a few months things will lighten up and the 39 million Americans who are unemployed, the majority of them will be hopefully employed again. So it's, you just got to look at the numbers. Hope, when Gilead Pharmacy or other people are coming out with news about possible cures, that breeds confidence, and confidence is what we need for people to get back to work and for the economy to turn around. And hopefully this will be a short period, not a long extended period of unemployment and suffering.
Thank you. Our next question is for Rob. So you mentioned the importance of having enough PPE. Is there a ratio, and there may not be, but some sort of measurement that you would recommend per employee? Is this something people like? Do we count members? How do people start thinking and budgeting for this? Wait. We're unmuting. Wouldn't be a webinar without unmuting problems. Oh gosh. Okay, go.
We're both muting or unmuting. I'm not so sure there's a ratio. You really got to figure out what kind of masks you want to get. The disposable ones are really obviously just that, disposables, one-time use. KN95s, N95s you can probably get for longer. It totally depends on what kind of work your employees are doing and in what kind of setting. But it is definitely available out there. I'm not so sure it's going to be available, as the further we go along in the same way it is today, because there's lots of people out there looking for it and trying to get it. But at the same time, there's, I'm sure, companies out there taking advantage of this stuff and creating it. It's just a matter of, when and how you can get it. So the sanitizer, the cleaning products, again, the bottom line is it's not going to go to waste. So if you think you're ordering more than you think you need, keep it. It's not going to go to waste. You're probably going to continue to need it. There's talk about this not necessarily changing relatively soon with regards to people coming into businesses. You can't go get a piece of pizza at a carryout without a mask on. So they're out there. They're necessary, unfortunately.
Do you recommend that employees bring their own or that employers hand it out?
I do recommend that the employees bring their own, but I certainly recommend also that the employer is prepared to provide masks for their employees. And again, that's depending on what the environment is, whether that's a disposable mask for the day, whether that's a different kind of mask that they can maybe use, longer term. Some of them can be washed. So it depends on what kind of you're going to get.
Thanks, Rob. Casey, you started, you touched on that basically our offices are going to have to look a lot different. But we did have a direct question to ask you to go a little bit further into that. What office configurations can provide safety to all? And then, on top of that, you mentioned the shared office spaces, really where people came to come and collect, whether it be the water cooler or the kitchen. What do you recommend for that, or how do they start planning and looking to those things?
Okay, well, you got to start with social distancing and use the common approaches to it. So if you're an office with 5 to 10 people, you're not going to be congregating in the same way of a 50 to 100 person facility. So let's use the small facility first. I think when you have a small facility, you just have to use people. If somebody's in your kitchen and it's a small, tight kitchen, don't go in. One person at a time. If you're in a larger facility and you have a lunchroom, then you've got to set your tables up that are social distancing. You've got to limit the number of chairs per table. Everybody may have to sit by themselves. So depending upon the space and the configuration that you can work with, if you don't have a lunchroom and people used to just go in and eat in a conference room, then you just have to encourage people to eat at their desk. If you had a policy that said no food at your desk, I believe it's best to change that right now. So, doesn't cost you any money to do any of those things.
Thanks, Casey. Daron, so there actually a few of you mentioned this idea of a task force or putting together a team of people. You mentioned different positions, but I was wondering, is there different skill sets that you would want to look for to bring in on that team, either a recovery or a specific safety or security team?
So, I mean, I mentioned, but there are, depending on the work environment or the workplace, it will require different people, and that really is up to leadership. But just to give you an example, senior leadership, obviously, IT, HR, facilities and operations, communications or public affairs, depending again where you are, and then security and safety coordinator. Again, depending on the work environment, it could be a factory, it could be a school, to form a recovery team, but more importantly is to define exactly what the expectation and the responsibilities of that recovery team is. And under the leadership is to ensure to assess what you would need in order to resume operations, to identify the resources that you need to get up and running, to ensure that you have a safe and secure environment, as mentioned earlier by by the other experts here, and also to drive the process as well as the communication aspect. So, what are you communicating to the outside world? What are you communicating internally to employees, staff, stakeholders, etc.? And then just to touch upon, to that point, just to touch upon something that Rob said, where certain people may have expectations of the employer or the facility, and if it's a JCC, that we're responsible also communicating what our expectations of people before they come here. So in other words, there's a shared collective responsibility. What is our responsibility as an employee? And what are the responsibilities of people who are coming, whether it's JCS, whether it's early childhood, whether it's a gym, whether it's an office space, whether it's a factory, whatever the case may be, people also have to understand what their responsibilities are.
Thanks, Daron. And I'm actually opening it back up so everyone could see all of our wonderful panelists again. We first want to take a moment to thank all of you very much for taking the time and sharing your expertise. There was a question in our Q&A, very specific about vendors for different PPE. And we do have some vendors, but it might be different quantity or quality, but we are happy to share out those resources after this webinar. So I just want to go around and give everybody a final chance. And why don't we go in reverse order? So Daron, just a final takeaway for everyone joining us today.
I think the final takeaway, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Charlene, for hosting, and thank you for all the panelists here. I appreciate it. I continue to learn from everyone. Everyone has something to bring to the table. We just need to utilize that. Make sure you have a plan and make sure that you communicate that effectively and continue to drive through this with an attitude of winning and overcoming and supporting and cooperating with everyone.
Thanks, Daron. Rob?
So going back to the plan, when you begin to prepare that plan, use a pencil with a very big eraser. Things change, they will continue to change. There will be different phases, have multiple versions of the plan, but you should still have a plan. We're happy to help if we could be helpful to those in the community, happy to help. And lastly, I would just say, the bar has been set by this gym owner in Belmar. So there are certainly ways to do it wrong. And if you can, respect the local authorities, have the blessings of the law enforcement, and try to do it the right way. So those around you in the community will also appreciate how you're opening.
Thank you, Rob. Casey?
Yes, I would just like to say, don't ingest disinfectants. I don't think it will work.
You have to try it.
On a serious note, I follow back what the guy said, is really be flexible. Don't fight change, and communicate, collaborate, work together, and we'll overcome anything.
Thank you. And Ken?
Amen.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the three words that come to mind that I've heard throughout this webinar are flexibility, relationships, and patience. You got to focus on those three things.
Well said.
Very well said. Thank you all for being our experts today and many days, and we really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you all for joining us. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Charlene.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.